Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jen Tremin, and I am the program manager with the Atlanta Beltline Partnership. I am your guest host today, and I appreciate all of you coming. This is our third installment of the Atlanta Beltline Partnership Health Lecture Series, and we are partnering with Georgia State University to provide you with informational lectures covering a diverse range of topics on health and fitness related topics. Today, our guest lecturer is Courtney Strosnider, who will be talking about senior fitness and why everyone should be physically active. Courtney completed her Master's of Science in Exercise Physiology from James Madison University and her Master's of Public Health with a concentration in health promotion and behavior from Georgia State University. She also coaches youth cross country and is a group fitness instructor for older adults. Courtney is also an avid runner and a lifelong exerciser, so definitely a perfect person to be talking about this today. She believes that exercise is medicine and that all people should be physically active. I love it. So there will be time for questions after Courtney's presentation. So please just type your questions into the chat and I will help relay them to Courtney. And without further ado, the presentation is yours.
Jen. Hey, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. I'm excited that there are so many familiar faces that I know here and some non-familiar faces. I have to brag because my grandma is on the call today, and that just makes me so proud because I want each of you to know that just being here today is a step in the right direction. And that's a little bit of a pun because we're going to talk about steps here shortly, but just really grateful for each of you. And this is being recorded. So if you like what you hear, you can certainly share this with friends and family of yours. So this is information for all. A lot of times when we talk about senior fitness, people either tune me out, they roll their eyes, or they just start doing something else. And I'm kind of thinking about my students here sometimes because they'll say, oh, I'm not going to work with old people. I don't want to work with old people. I want to work with athletes. And you know, I'm here to tell you that we're all going to get older, right? So whether you think you're only going to work with a certain population or you're never going to work with an older adult, that's a little bit of a lie there because we all get older. This is important information, whether it's for your career or for yourself or for a loved one. This is really important information. One of the big take-home messages that I want to give you today is that it is never too late to start. A lot of times people will say, well, you know, I've already passed my prime and I don't feel like this is right for me. Well, I'm here to tell you it is right for you. And now is as good a day as any to get started. So we're going to jump right in here. And I want to give you a little bit of background information. When I use the term older adult, I know there's an image that comes to mind. Maybe you think about your grandparents, maybe you think about your friends and you think, oh, I'm not an older adult, but they are. Or maybe you think, maybe that'll be me one day. Well, when I'm talking about an older adult, typically I'm referring to about 65 and older. That being said, there are categories within that older adult range where we can get more specific, where we might say an older adult or an oldest old adult. And I'm not going to dive into those details, but typically what I'm looking at is about 65 and older. That being said, we can often say that people who are a little younger than 65, maybe about 55 and older with a chronic condition can also be considered to be an older adult. So that phrase, you're only as old as you feel, there's a little bit of truth to that too. So, you know, you consider yourself to be wherever it is that you want to be. If you want to consider yourself to be an older adult or a senior citizen, it's totally up to you. If there's a different word that you'd like to use, that's fine. But that's really what I'm talking about here, 65 and older. So there's some things that we know automatically. And we know that as age increases, physical activity decreases. And as we get older, that number, those number of minutes of physical activity or those times of the week that you're physically active continues to decrease. It decreases when we reach our 30s, when it decreases more in our 40s and our 50s, and it continues to go down all the way into our 80s and beyond. And so we need to start talking about, like, why is this happening? And we'll dive a little bit more into that. The reason why this is really important is my other big passion, and that's prevention of disease. We know that physical inactivity is directly linked with lots of chronic diseases. Those big ones you hear on commercials and on the news and in the newspaper and on social media now: cardiovascular disease or heart disease, hypertension, peripheral artery disease, which is blockages in the limbs, like your arms or your legs, diabetes, stroke, high blood pressure. All of those diseases, those big chronic diseases, are directly linked with physical inactivity. So if there's another thing I can convince you of today, it's that activity can prevent and treat some of those diseases. So now you might be thinking, okay, we know that physical activity is great. It prevents and treats all of these things, but why aren't people doing this? Why is there this big decrease as we get older? So let's talk a little bit more about that. So why don't older adults exercise? And you'll hear me interchangeably use the words exercise and physical activity. You know, there's a lot of literature about each of these. Exercise is typically a planned activity, whether that's going for a run or a walk or going to the gym. And physical activity is any sort of movement. Here today, I'm going to use those terms interchangeably because I want you to use the term that you are more comfortable using, whether that's just being active, whether it's movement, whether that's exercise. I'll let you use any of those, that's fine. So here's some of the big reasons why older adults don't exercise. Health disparities, which are some of those diseases that I mentioned before. You would say, well, you know, I have diabetes or I have high blood pressure, I shouldn't exercise. But I've already told you that you should, right? We just talked about that and how it can be used as part of this prevention. Some older adults are just not interested. They just don't feel like doing it, don't want to do it, don't really have an interest in it. And my thought behind that is maybe they just haven't found what they love to do yet. So I'll give you lots of examples of potential types of physical activity today. A lack of knowledge of what to do or how to exercise. That can be a tough one. I mean, if we talk about older adults now, that might have been a few years ago since they had that physical education class in high school or middle school or elementary school. So it might have been a few years since they've been able to have specific exercise. So there's been a lot of new data and a lot of new types of exercise now, which I think makes it more accessible for people. It might be more interesting for people now. Lack of experience exercising or being active, not really knowing where to start, is often a reason why older adults don't exercise. Lack of self-efficacy. This is a really interesting one. Self-efficacy is essentially the belief in yourself that you are able to do a task. So maybe an older adult might not believe that they're able to do that task. Maybe they don't believe they're able to exercise. And again, that might come with lack of experience, just not interested, or it might come from fear, right? There's a fear of injury. There's a fear of getting hurt, not knowing what to do. There's a fear of discomfort. And so we'll talk about some of those things in just a minute. The next one I really like, perceived age appropriateness of activity. Put a square or a box around that one. Again, I believe, and Jen mentioned this so nicely at the beginning, I believe that all people should be active. And whether that is running, I love to run, maybe that's strength training. I know my colleague, Pete Rolletter's on the call, and I know he loves doing his strength training. You just got to find what you like to do. Okay. And so maybe that's not being a marathon runner. That's okay. It doesn't hurt my feelings that you don't ever want to run. That's fine. But we need to find what's appropriate for you and what you enjoy doing. And so when we talk about age appropriateness, it's really more of a safety measure and just finding what you like to do. Lack of motivation, the belief that sedentary behavior is normal. That's kind of a silly excuse to me, because if we look at research from many, many, many years ago, before any of us on this call were alive, so we're talking centuries ago, they weren't sedentary. People weren't sedentary, right? They moved all the time. They were on their feet. They walked to work. They walked to church. They walked to get their food. They were those hunters and gatherers. Remember that from your history classes growing up. So sedentary behavior is really not normal. The way that the United States has shifted over the last 50 to 100 years has become much more sedentary to try and make this normal. But I think that should be our challenge for all of us on the call and beyond, to change that normal, right? Be more active, get those steps in, figure out ways to add more physical activity into your everyday life. Perceived capability. Again, this kind of ties in with that age appropriateness of activity. Just again, finding what you enjoy doing, what you are comfortable doing, and then getting excited about it and getting passionate about it and doing that. So my next question is, why does this matter? Like, who cares? Why are we here today? Why am I talking about this? Why am I super excited to be talking about this? And there are a few big reasons. One, I'm going to say this several times, physical inactivity or being sedentary leads to increased risk of chronic disease. And you might be thinking, well, I've already got that chronic disease. I already have the hypertension. I already have the diabetes. You know, the ship has sailed. It's fine. We'll move on from here. Well, when you continue to be inactive, you can start to have more and more of those chronic diseases. And when we know that when we pile on more of those and have more diseases and have more health concerns, that's just going to increase the likelihood of other issues to pop up. They each make each other worse, if you will. So by being physically active, we can decrease the risk and control some of the progression of those diseases. The other reason why this matters is it plays in the psychological side of things. You know, something that I found that's been really interesting, especially over the past couple of years, is this rise in mental health. Right? We are learning way more about depression and anxiety and loneliness. I mean, all of us can probably relate to this. 2020 was probably our loneliest year of our entire lives. Well, you know what? Physical activity can help with that. So when we can be physically active, we know that that improves mood. We know it can help control anxiety and depression. We know we get that endorphin high where you just feel really good inside. Exercise and physical activity do that. So now you might be thinking, okay, well, what about the loneliness part? Well, you know what's one of the best things about physical activity and exercise? You do not have to do it alone. About 5 or 6 mornings of the week, I meet my training partner and we go out for a run together. That is my social time and it's my exercise time. And we look forward to that every day. And it's really fun. So again, you don't have to run, but you can meet up with other people. You can be socially distant when you do it. And you can, have that camaraderie together. The other piece of that is it brings in that accountability factor. You know, my friend knows that I'm going to meet her each morning. She knows that I'm going to be there waiting for her if she's running late, but we plan to be there. Cognitive decline. We're starting to see more and more research about the impact of physical activity and things like Alzheimer's and dementia. It can potentially slow the progression of those down. So again, a huge benefit of physical activity. The other one that might be very interesting to some of you is that being sedentary can start to limit independence. Meaning you may have to start relying on other people to help you with certain tasks. Or it might mean that you need to have an aide come stay with you at home or live in a facility that has aides to be taken care of. So that's usually a big one that gets some interest peaked there. Okay. So I've mentioned a lot of these benefits. I'm just going to touch on a couple of them a little bit more. I just talked about the maintaining independence. Along with that is physical activity can decrease the risk of falls. One of the biggest reasons why older adults lose their independence is because of the falls risk. So the more falls that someone has, that we start to see more of that decreased independence. So thinking about ways to improve balance, okay? Doing things like maybe holding onto the counter and standing on one foot. All right, see if you can do that without holding on. Doing those kind of balance exercises can be tremendously beneficial. I like to challenge my undergraduate students who are typically in their early 20s. Are you guys adding balance exercises into your training program? If not, it's time to start with that. We see a decline in balance in as early as in someone's 20s. Okay, and guess what? As you get older, it only goes down more. I'm in my 30s and I've noticed that my balance has decreased even just within the past couple of years. Okay. The other piece of this independence and risk of falls is the ability to do your activities of daily living. In the exercise science world, we call these ADLs, activities of daily living. And when we think about these activities of daily living, we're talking about bringing in the groceries. We're thinking about getting the mail. We might be taking the dog for the walk. We might be playing with the cat. It might be trying to, collect the offering at church. These kind of activities that you may do day in and day out. You want to be able to do those your whole life, right? Well, physical activity can help with that. So we want to make sure that we are designing exercise programs so that it will help benefit those activities of daily living. All right, here's the part that I really like to talk about. It's not too late, okay? It is never too late to begin exercise. Sometimes people get really discouraged. Well, I haven't exercised in 30 years. That's okay. Today's a beautiful day to start, right? A lot of times people like to start on a Monday. Guess what, folks? Today's Monday, right? So hopefully you'll get some physical activity in later today. Here's what I want to tell you is that with physical activity at any age, we can see regression of heart disease. This means that that plaque that can build up in your arteries in your heart can start to go away with exercise. Again, this is at any age. We can lower blood pressure with exercise. We can control those blood sugar levels. I know we're starting to see, again, a continuous rise in people being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. All right, part of that is because of that sedentary lifestyle. Well, we can start to control those blood sugar levels quite a bit more if we're adding the exercise component into our daily life. A big motivator for a lot of people is to get off some of that medication. You might be on medication for high blood pressure, high cholesterol. It could be for diabetes. If we are being physically active, we can potentially decrease the medication usage. Now, y'all know that you need to talk to your doctor about that for sure. And they can work with you to help figure out, okay, if you exercise for a certain number of days, for a certain number of months, have you come back in, do the scans, do the blood work, and then you can have that discussion about potentially decreasing the medications. Weight loss, weight maintenance, of course, exercise can help with that. Increased muscle mass. Those of you that were on the call with my colleague last week, Pete Roletter, and you learned more about building muscle mass. Well, this is so important in our older adults too, because it plays back into those activities of daily living, being able to carry the groceries in. If you're anything like me, I like to do a one-trip grocery run, right? I want to stack all those bags on my arms and do it in one trip. And I still remember my dad telling me when I was little, Courtney, you can take more than one trip. Yeah, I could, but I can do it in one, right? And so I want to put all those bags on my arms and take them in. Well, if you're being physically active, you can do those kinds of things. The other thing too is thinking about, okay, how many trips do I have to take? Do I need to take breaks in those trips? Increasing the muscle mass, increasing the aerobic fitness can help you do as many trips as you would like, whether it's one like me or taking a bunch of trips without breaks. Feeling better and increased confidence. Okay, everybody wants to be more confident, right? Confident people, if you imagine the most confident person that you know, they probably stand up tall, shoulders back, and they look you right in the eyes, right? Well, being physically active can help with that too. So how do we do this? How do we go from 0 minutes being pretty inactive or just kind of your day-to-day steps just around the house to being what we would consider physically active? How do we get started? Well, everything starts with a goal. What is it that you want to do? Is it you want to be able to walk for 20 minutes without stopping? Do you want to be able to get through a soccer game watching your grandkids and not be out of breath walking to and from the car? Maybe you want to be able to get up all the stairs in the choir loft without being winded. Maybe you want to be able to get up and down the risers in your choir practice. Whatever it is, maybe you want to carry all those bags in one trip. Whatever it is, we have to start with a goal and we build from there. The second thing that I would say in terms of steps to get started is figure out what it is that you like to do. Do you like to walk? Do you like to garden? Do you like to swim? Do you like to bike? Do you like to play croquet? Do you like to play cornhole? Do you like to play badminton? I mean, I think you know where I'm going with this. There's a lot of physical activity out there. So a lot of times when I talk to my students who, again, usually in their 20s, they'll say, well, I don't like running. Okay, don't run then. Let's find a kind of exercise that you do like to do. And so it's kind of the same thing here. If you were to say, well, I don't want to run marathons like you, that's okay. You don't have to. Let's find what it is that you like to do. And like I said, maybe that's gardening. Maybe you want to start a business cutting grass in your neighborhood. Okay, well, let's figure out how we can increase that aerobic capacity, your heart's ability to function well and beat for a really long time while you're sweating out there cutting grass. And then you know what we have to do is we actually have to do it. Okay, so my best suggestion here is to start in short, realistic bouts. I'm talking, this might be 2 minutes. It could be 10 minutes, depending upon where you are. I know I've got some fit friends on this call here who can go for 30 minutes without stopping, and that's great. But if you can only do 10 minutes, you know what? I am just as proud of you as I am as a person who can go for an hour-and-a-half walk, okay? And what I would encourage you to do if you're doing these short bouts, do them a few times throughout the day. It might be 2 times a day to start. It might be 6 times a day to start. Figure out what fits best for you. Typically, what I recommend is if you can do a couple of bouts, 2 to 3 bouts, with a couple minutes rest in between, that's a great way to start. If that still feels like a lot to you, you know what we do at least 3 times a day? We eat, right? So how about a little short walk after breakfast, after lunch, and after dinner? Now we've got 3 walks in already. And again, you might say, but Courtney, it's only 2 minutes. You know what? But that's a total of 6 minutes more today than you were doing yesterday. Okay, and that's really something to be proud of. The other suggestion that I give a lot of people is find other opportunities throughout the day to get in some physical activity. Maybe that's during TV commercials. If y'all are anything like me, you've noticed over the years, commercials are getting longer and my shows are getting shorter. It's incredibly frustrating, but I'm gonna say that gives us some more time for some physical activity. How about 3 laps around the house during commercials? How about you sit up out of your chair and back down on your chair 10 times each commercial break? How about maybe some wall push-ups, 5 wall push-ups during the commercials? These are all excellent ways to add in some physical activity in a pretty accessible manner. I mentioned that after meals, maybe doing a little walk or a little routine of exercises. Maybe after your Zoom calls, if you're on Zoom calls all day, get a 5-minute break, take a walk around the house. And then again, bring in the family and friends. Right? If maybe you have a neighbor who you notice likes to walk or might also be kind of lonely, maybe you could go for a walk together. Again, doesn't have to be long. I think 2, 3, 5 minutes would be a great place to start. I wanted to go over this really quickly. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but there are resources. I want you to know that you are not alone in this. There are some great resources here in Atlanta. I know not everyone on this call is here in Atlanta, but Atlanta Track Club, for example, has a master's level team. They have a coach that works with master's athletes. And let me tell you, if you move, you're an athlete, okay? Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. But Atlanta Track Club does a great job with runners and walkers. Big Peach Running Company here in Atlanta, again, does a great job meeting you where you are to help you figure out how to improve that aerobic fitness. And then I've listed some others. You know, we've got YMCAs all over the country. There are churches all over the country that offer various levels of fitness classes. Pre-COVID, I was teaching at my church doing group fitness classes for older adults. Finding a gym that has trained professionals that have a degree in exercise science that can help you design a program or even just give you an orientation to the equipment. Neighborhood HOAs. Your neighborhood might be doing little exercise classes that you could join in on. Online Zoom calls, YouTube is a great resource to find some easy exercise classes for you to access from home too. I wanted to do a little sample here just so that you can see how you might start. If your goal, again, we start with a goal, is to walk for 20 minutes without stopping, what this might look like is, like I mentioned before, walking for 3 to 5 minutes at a time, resting between those bouts, trying this 2 to 3 times per day. How do we increase it? Every 2 weeks, adding an additional minute or 2 minutes, depends on how you feel. And I would encourage you to do this 2 to 3 times a week. That's manageable. I think we all have those few extra minutes we could fit this in. My second level of challenge to you would be to find another enjoyable activity for you to do 1 to 2 days per week. That could be gardening. It could be chair exercise class. It could be yoga. It could be water aerobics, golf, bowling, croquet. There are tons of options. Pickleball, some of you are familiar with pickleball, another great option. So lots of ways to get started here. So to wrap things up a little bit, I wanted to go over a few take-home messages. I think I've said this probably 52 times. Exercise and physical activity are for everyone. We just have to find the right kind for you. And I promise you there is a right kind for you. If you don't believe me, send me an email. I'll give you my email in just a second and we're going to set this up. All right. Don't give up. You have to start somewhere. It may feel uncomfortable at first, but I bet you the second or third time you do it, there's going to be a little less discomfort. And that's how we start to build a habit. Okay. I already told you that exercise can be preventative. Exercise should be a part of any treatment plan for disease. If your doctor is not talking to you about physical activity and exercise, you need to find a new doctor. Okay. This is a part of being a holistic, healthy person. And then, like I mentioned at the beginning, there's some fear with getting started, but I can promise you to infinity and beyond that the benefits always outweigh the risks when it comes to exercise. And then if you're not convinced enough, I've got to inspire you a little bit here. There are tons of older adults who are physically active, but I thought these two women are they're just really getting after it. Miss Betty here on the left-hand side, Betty Lindbergh, she is local here to Atlanta. This article is 2 years old. She is now 96 years old, but 2 years ago when she was 94, she recorded the fastest ever 5K in 51 minutes and 26 seconds. You go, Miss Betty. Okay, we all want to be Miss Betty. I can tell you all my running buddies are all like, we want to be just like Miss Betty when we get older. This past year, she did not let COVID and, shutting down all the races stop her. She was winning these virtual races. I mean, every distance from 100 meters up to 5Ks and 10Ks, incredible. On the right-hand side, this is Julia Hawkins, AKA Hurricane Hawkins, okay? 103 years old, breaking a record in the 100-meter dash. If that is not inspiring to you, I don't know what is. But there are people out here who are older adults and just doing an incredible job of inspiring older adults, younger adults, kids, and reminding us that we can always get moving. I think that's it. I know I talked really fast, but it's because I got really excited. So I'm happy to answer any questions or go over anything. If someone wants these slides, I'm happy to email them to you. I think that's it. But thank you all so much.
Thanks, Courtney. I definitely feel inspired and want to have a cool nickname like Hurricane Hawkins when I'm 100.
Hurricane Hawkins. I was like, you go, girl.
That's awesome. So we do have a couple questions. Okay. So do you have any suggestions around overcoming a lack of stretching?
Yes. So stretching is a good one. A lot of people tend to forget about the stretching component. So 2 things that I would recommend doing. So I've already challenged you to add in some physical activity a couple times a week. I would encourage you to spend 5 minutes out of the whole day. You could break it up into 5 1-minute stretches throughout the day. All your stretches can be done in a chair. Okay, you can sit in a chair and reach for your toes. You can sit in a chair and reach for the ceiling. You can sit in a chair and reach your arms across your body. Okay, stretching is very accessible and can be done truly anytime during the day. But it just is one of those things where you just have to get started and you have to make a habit out of it. Again, not an older adult yet, but one day I'll be there. About 4 years ago, I started doing yoga. And I have been committed to yoga usually about 2 times per week. And I have seen some big differences. It's one of those things that takes a long time to see some major changes, but even just some stretching can be really beneficial. But just finding little times throughout the day to add it in is going to be great.
Great. Thank you. This wasn't necessarily a question, but I did bring up a question that I had as a younger person. I have a lot of injuries from past sports. So I don't know, do you have any suggestions for someone like me as I age, or maybe someone that is an older adult that has some previous injuries as athletes to kind of overcome that?
Yes. So movement is everything. So no one like if you got injured 10 years ago and then you just sat for 10 years and you don't feel any better, maybe we should make a change here. Maybe we should start moving. Sometimes it could be the type of injury. A lot of times we see in young athletes tend to see like ankle injuries, knee injuries, and then as we get older, maybe some back injuries. Let's change the mode. Maybe a lot of weight bearing exercise, like standing on your feet and you're having to hold your own weight, like walking or running, for example, isn't the best type of exercise. But biking is non-weight bearing. Any sort of seated chair exercise classes are non-weight bearing. The pool is an awesome resource because it's not weight bearing. You feel effortless in the pool and weightless in the pool. So walking in the pool would be really helpful. Doing a water aerobics class. But if you're determined to be weight bearing, one of the things that you can do is there's some physical therapy clinics in the area, at least in Atlanta, and I'm sure they're all over the country too, is using what's called an Alter G treadmill. And what that can do is can decrease your body weight when you're on the treadmill. And so instead of being at 100% body weight, you could walk at 75% body weight. So that's an option. A little pricier option because you need to go to a physical therapy clinic, but there are things like that that do exist too.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So one last question to wrap us up, and then I will share our next series, or next topic in the series. So what is your motivation to work in this field and specifically with older adults?
Okay, so one is selfish. One day I'm going to be older, so I need to know how to take care of myself. And two, I think we owe something to our older adults. They've been there before us, and I think we have so much to learn from our older adults. And so if we don't take the time to take care of them as they've taken care of us for so many years, then I think that that's doing a disservice. The other piece of it is, and my students know this, if I have any students still on this call, I am all for prevention of disease. Someone who is in pain or someone who has disease, that's not okay. That's not okay at all. And we can treat those things with exercise. And so it's really just taking my passion of exercise, something that I've loved my whole life, and finding the appropriate kind for each of you, for each older adult out there. I think that, again, all of us are meant to move. We just have to find the right kind of movement for you. So I think that's kind of what's inspired me. Also, I think about the people that I love. You know, I want my grandma to live forever. She's on this call. I want you to live forever, Grammy. I want my parents to live forever, and just taking care of them and make sure that they are the healthiest they can be.
Well, we appreciate your passion and you sharing that with us today, and for the recording for others to watch. So thank you for your time. I certainly learned a lot, and we'll be sharing it with my parents and grandparents.
Awesome. Yes, it's a great dinner topic conversation. I promise that.
Definitely better than politics and whatnot.
Yes, exactly. This is a safe conversation to have.
Definitely. So everyone, please thank Courtney for her time today. That was really great. And I thank all of you for joining us. And if you are interested in future topics, our next series is on April 22nd at the same time, 12:15, and that will be about nutrition. So make sure you check that out. And I'm just going to drop into the chat. We have recordings from our previous sessions that were really amazing. And if you want to sign up for the next session, you can go to beltline.org/events. And thank you all for your time. It was really great. I enjoyed being here today. And thank you, Courtney.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Hope y'all have a great day.
Thank you.